And good morning once again, everyone. We are continuing our interviews for today. We now have Dan Whitfield, who is a Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. So again, just like with our last interview, go ahead and share this video because again, we definitely want all of our viewers and listeners to hear from all of the various viewpoints because it is so important. Can't stress this enough to be an informed voter. Not going to tell you who to vote for, but we're going to definitely tell you to exercise your right to vote because as we say in the fraternity, Alpha Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, voteless people is a hopeless people. So I'm going to drop a few shares myself.
Yeah, I'm just getting it all shared out right now as well.
We've got about a minute and a half.
All right.
All right. All right, and I see Pastor Loftus is on our live feed. Appreciate you come in. We like having candidates on each other's live feed, because that's how we interact with each other. Oh, and I just realized we got the all gospel intro. I need to actually take that out for political interviews. All right, so getting ready to go live in just a few seconds. No, well, I mean, this is our Gospel Wednesday, but we will have gospel. We will go back to the gospel at the end of the segment. We're going to continue our political interviews, and then we will get back to all Gospel Wednesday. And Brother Cosmo will join us at the top of the hour. So everyone stand by, and here we go. Well, actually, we got the community conversations intro. All right, and I'm going live in about 10 seconds. And here we go. KLK 12.5 FM. Good morning to you once again. It is Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. This is another special edition of Community Conversations. We are still doing our series of political interviews, and we will be doing these every day up until election day. And of course, as always, KLK and the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, we do not endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office, but we do encourage you to exercise your right to vote. These interviews are provided for informational purposes only. Joining us now is Dan Whitfield. Dan is a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. So we're not going to waste any time. So Dan, just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for the United States Senate.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on this morning. I greatly appreciate it. So my name is Dan Whitfield. I am, as you said, a Democratic candidate running for the United States Senate. And, I call myself a common sense Democrat. I'm a regular working class guy. I've, spent most of my life working blue collar jobs. And then I started getting my education, got some degrees, and now I am working in information technology in a white collar job. So I've kind of been all over the place. I understand a lot of the struggles that working class Arkansans and Americans are going through. And I think that this is actually going to give me the unique opportunity to truly represent the people of Arkansas and America. A lot of people believe that America is a democracy, but we are in fact a representative republic. And unfortunately, our representatives no longer represent us. They represent their special interest donors. And because of that, we're no longer a representative republic. We are what is actually defined as an oligarch, where a few wealthy individuals control the flow of government. And I'm going to do my part to return the control of our government from those special interest donors to the actual people, to we the people.
Okay. And of course, we are now on your website, which is danwhit.com. danwhitcongress.us. That's danwhitcongress.us. And you can just simply Google Dan Whitfield to find it. And of course, you do have an issues page. So we're going to just kind of go up and down the list and let you talk about your stance on the issue. So the first one is healthcare for all.
For sure. And you can actually just go to danforarkansas.com. If you go to danforarkansas.com, it takes you right to my website. So the first, and I would honestly say the most important policy that I support is healthcare for all, because it doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican and independent or anything else. We are all suffering from high healthcare costs, and people are, having their lives devastated by medical debts and the predatory privatized healthcare system that we've been facing for a century now. So what healthcare for all is, I'm going to break it down, give you guys some boring numbers, but I want you to understand what it is and how we're going to pay for it, because it's not free and we will pay for it. So the way that we're going to pay for healthcare for all is it will be 4% of your income after $29,000. So if you are currently on Medicaid, or if you are on Medicare and your household income is $29,000 or less, healthcare for all will be no cost to your family. You will actually increase your benefits. You're not going to, if you're on Medicaid, you're not going to have to worry about calling up a clinic being, hey, can I set an appointment? And then they're like, well, what insurance do you have? You're like, well, I have Medicaid. Oh, we don't accept Medicaid care. And they hang up on you. This is a problem. I've been on Medicaid before that a lot of people, face and suffer from. So you can't get the quality care that you really deserve, or even you finally find that person who accepts Medicaid, and then they're like, okay, well, the soonest we can get you in here is next week. Or for the dentist, maybe, you need your kid to go see a dentist and they have Medicaid, or AR kids. And it's like, okay, we'll see you in like 2 months or 3 months. You won't have to worry about these problems anymore, because everyone will be accepting healthcare for all. If you are currently on Medicare, you have these crazy, it's just absolutely terrible how we take care of the seniors in our country, but you have to worry about paying these supplements for different advantage plans for vision and hearing and dental. It's not included in your Medicare, but in healthcare for all includes not just healthcare, but vision, dental, hearing. It also includes in-home healthcare for our elderly Americans who have dedicated their entire lives to bettering our society, and who are unfortunately being thrown into these forever homes where once you go into one of these homes, you never come out. And people shouldn't be forced to go into one of these homes and then spend their entire life savings just to pay for a spot in a bed. And it's absolutely terrible, but it's okay. I digress. I apologize. But how we pay for it is 4% of your income after $29,000. So for the average Arkansan family, what that means for you, the average Arkansan household income was about $48,000 last year. So you would take $48,000 and subtract $29,000. And now 4% of that comes out to about $660 per year. $660 a year. No more insurance premiums, deductibles, or copays. A $200 per year prescription drug price cap. So if you are a type 1 diabetic, or your child's a type 1 diabetic, which 10% of Americans are diabetics at this point, it's absolutely another big issue. But if you are a diabetic and you fill your first prescription in January and it's $200, that means you no longer for the rest of the year have to pay for your prescription drug refills. Very, very important. As a cable guy, I had gone into people's houses where I saw people cutting their pills because they had to ration their life-saving prescriptions in order to pay for their cable. I know some entitled people might say, well, why would they choose, their cable over their pills? Y'all just don't understand. Some older people, they don't have anything. They don't have any family. That is all they have. So, but these are things that people should never have to do in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. So let's change it up a little bit to go to where, let's say you make $100,000 a year. So you're lower middle class. If you make $100,000 a year, you would subtract $29,000, leaves you with $71,000. And about 4% of that brings you to around $233 a month to cover your entire household. Again, no premiums, deductibles, or copays. So this is going to save the working class significant amounts of money. My wife and I, we have decent jobs. We should have decent health insurance, but we pay like $860 a month. And we have a $1,500 deductible. So we paid Blue Cross Blue Shield, our family alone, $11,000 before we even get any help. Now, these are different, medical debt. These are problems that everybody, like I had said, is facing. It doesn't matter your political affiliation. These are kitchen table problems. 60% of all bankruptcies in America are medical debt related, 60%. And the absolutely worst part of that is that 70% of the people who file bankruptcy for medical debt have medical insurance. They're going to work, they're paying high premiums, their deductibles, they're doing everything right, working their entire lives. They can get sick and lose everything. And that is just absolutely wrong and something that should never happen in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world.
Okay. And the next issue that we see on your website is federal decriminalization of cannabis and expunging cannabis convictions.
Yeah, man, this is awesome. I get to go right through my policies. I wish we had more
time. That's how we design this interview. We just kind of give you the opportunity to talk about what you stand for so that the listeners can be informed.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so great. So we know the war on drugs has failed. There's no question about it. What we need to do is federally decriminalize cannabis and nationally expunge all cannabis convictions. 80% of the people who were arrested with cannabis possession have never even committed a prior crime. Here in America, we have about 5% of the world's population, yet we still have 25% of the incarcerated population in the entire world. Here in Arkansas, we are number 4 for most people incarcerated per capita. We have Asa Hutchinson talking about spending $80 to $100 million to expand a prison to put 500 more beds in, when we could just simply expunge 500 cannabis convictions, save that $100 million, and instead put that $100 million towards programs that are actually going to rehabilitate and help people that are in need, and not just create more free prison labor in our privatized prison industry. Now, there are a few different key things to federal decriminalization. One thing that it's going to do that is extremely important is it's going to allow VA doctors to prescribe cannabis instead of opioids and antidepressants and all these different pills for our veterans, which is extremely important because, I mean, personally, I have a lot of veterans in my family. I have 4 brothers that are veterans. I mean, it's just insane. But we have to allow the VA doctors to be able to prescribe cannabis, but they cannot currently do that as a Schedule I drug. Another thing that's important to think about is that we have a lot of legal businesses in states, either recreationally legal states or medicinally legal states, like here in Arkansas, where we have 35 dispensaries and 8 cultivation facilities, that because cannabis is still federally illegal, they can't do business with FDIC insured banks. So a lot of these businesses have just huge amounts of cash on hand. They're trying to figure out what to do with all this cash, and it really sets them up to be victims of crimes. So we have to make sure that we are helping our legal businesses to be able to work with FDIC insured banks.
All right.
Because there's so much into cannabis. Oh my gosh.
All right. Next on the list is relieving student debt and providing education for all.
Absolutely. So universal pre-K it should just be a no-brainer at this point. We need, I mean, the data is there. I work in data and analytics. I mean, I'm a very fact-driven person using data. And we know that when children go to pre-K, they are more likely to succeed in life and less likely to go to prison. The statistics are there. It is a fact. So we should be doing everything we can to expand these opportunities for children, especially, children whose parents may not be able to afford to put them in childcare or pre-K. I mean, my daughter, she's 9 years old now. So it wasn't too long ago when my wife and I had to worry about this. And we were paying, the cheapest one we could find. I think it was like $240 a week. I mean, it was just ridiculously expensive. Actually, I think it might have been $120 a week or $480 a month. But I mean, that's still a lot of money. That's a lot, most of your rent. And, a lot of especially single parents can't afford to pay these high costs for childcare, and they're being forced to put themselves into uncomfortable situations where they may be putting their child in an environment that's not as safe and that doesn't have the learning opportunities for their children as putting them in a pre-K would. I also support, of course, a free public college tuition and free vocational training. We have to make sure that we are setting our children up for success in the future. Our children are the future of our country, and education is the foundation on which our children are learning and growing and, figuring out how to be productive members of our society. So we have to make sure that we can provide that free public college tuition. And we can do that simply by, because I know everyone's gonna be like, well, How do we pay for it? Nothing's free. Again, well, it's very simple. A 1% speculation tax on Wall Street, a currently untaxed investment opportunity, would actually pay for every single child, not just American, but migrants as well, to go to a 4-year university. So there are ways we can do it. We just have to have politicians with political courage who are willing to not take money from the special interests like Goldman Sachs and Wall Street billionaires, and then vote against this legislation that will benefit the lives of their constituents. And eliminating debt is extremely important. I mean, we're around $1.86 trillion in student debt right now. We haven't had to make any student debt payments in a year. No one has had to pay their student debt loan. And you know what? The world hasn't ended. The banking financial institutions haven't collapsed. Banks aren't insolvent. We know now that the student debt isn't really required. I mean, if you understand that we are a sovereign nation that has a fiat currency, we could make student debt eliminate tomorrow with a keystroke, and it wouldn't even cause any inflation at all. And the way I really look at it and try to push out this point is that in 2008, financial institutions took advantage of the American people. They directly caused intentionally the financial collapse in 2008, causing that recession. And then in response, what they did was they came in and they stole houses from millions of hardworking Americans, people who lost everything because of what they did. And what did we do in return? We bailed out big banks to the tune of $16.8 trillion. If we, the people, can bail out banks to the tune of $16.8 trillion, they can absolutely bail out students who are doing everything they can to better our society for $1.8 trillion. And even eliminating medical debt wouldn't cost that much money. We're looking at around $320 billion.
Well, Dan, I want to, if I can interject just for a moment. So what would you say to those who say, because whenever you mention about forgiving student loan debt, you have people that say, well, they shouldn't have got that debt in the first place. Didn't nobody tell them to go to college to sign up for a degree that's basically not allowing them to get a job? So what would you say to those people?
Yeah. And I mean, I do hear that all the time, especially like people who are like, well, I went to school and I worked a minimum wage job. I paid my way through school and I have no debt. Well, I mean, thank you so much for all of your hard work and everything you did, but times are different. I'm a student, so I understand. I mean, most people don't realize that even in the last 10 years alone, the price of books has gone up 1,000%. It's great that y'all were able to get degrees when you could get a 4-year bachelor's degree for $5,000 or $10,000. But what you have to understand now is that students are paying $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 a semester just to get a degree. And during that same time, we haven't seen minimum wage increase at all. So people that are working full time still can't afford to pay that debt. The majority of student debt are people who've actually paid off the base amount of the principal of their loan, and they're just paying interest. I understand y'all did it right, and it might not seem fair to you, but you know what? It was never fair to you. It was never fair to us. It was never fair to anyone. And we should be treating education as the most important part, the most important thing we give our children into our society, and not a way for banks to profit off of people.
Speaking with Dan Whitfield, Democratic candidate for the U.S. And now you mentioned about the minimum wage increase. And again, you have people who say, well, why should we increase minimum wage? A person working at a fast food restaurant shouldn't be making $15 an hour when I'm working in a more skilled position and I'm making that now. So what is your response to that?
Well, if you're working in a more skilled position, then you should be paid more than what you're making now. I'm from California. That's where I grew up. I left California as soon as I could when I became an adult, moved to Louisiana, moved to Nevada, and I've lived in Wyoming. I've been kind of all over the place until I settled here in Arkansas back in 2014 and moved my family out here because the cost of living was less. So let me correct this myth for you all right now, because unfortunately, y'all have been conditioned to believe that a lower cost of living makes the value of your work worth less money. That is absolutely not true. Don't let these people convince you that you're worth less money because of where you live than somewhere else. So people should be making more money. If, like I said, wealthiest nation in the history of the world, we are seeing billionaires working towards becoming trillionaires while the wealth inequality gap continues to grow. People are struggling with high inflation costs right now and high tax.
Come back later.
While we have people,
Super
billionaires,
Brother Carbs.
that are avoiding
Oh, well, I'm
taxation.
on the air now. You have to come back in about 15 minutes. Oh, yeah, yeah, do that.
And it's a big problem. We can't allow billionaires and giant corporations to avoid taxation while
Appreciate that, by the way.
are paying between 30 to 40% in taxes, and the working class people are paying between 15 to 27% or more in taxes. We just have to be putting people first, and that's really one of the important things about my campaign as a working class person, is that I want to put the working class first, because without us, billionaires can't exist. Billionaires require us in order to continue to grow their giant wealths. And if they're going to continue to grow their giant wealths, we should be able to have the opportunity to work hard like we do and seek a financial freedom, and not just work 50 years of our lives just to retire to live poor until you die a few years later.
All right. And getting back to your position, this is Dan for Arkansas.com. You can get all of his positions. All right. Let's see, we got 10 minutes left. Protecting our farmers, ranchers, and promoting farming co-ops.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really important here in Arkansas. One of our main industries in Arkansas is the agricultural industry. We bring in somewhere around $16 billion a year just from rice and cotton in our ag. So we need to make sure we are protecting our small farms. I understand my opponent right now, Senator John Bozeman, he claims to be pro-ag and pro-farm, pro-rancher. But the fact is that Chapter 12 bankruptcies here in Arkansas continue to grow. We are seeing more and more farmers and ranchers lose everything, while at the same time, we're seeing giant corporations like Tyson that are bringing in billions of dollars in government subsidies and profiting billions of dollars on top of that. What we need to do is we need to reallocate those subsidies that are just going to billion-dollar corporations to help them expand their profits, to go towards our small ranchers and farmers, the people who are the heart of our country. Those are the people that need the help, and those are the people we should be getting the help. And the only reason that they're not receiving the help that they should be getting is because it comes back to politicians that don't have political courage, to corrupt politicians, people that take money from Tyson. Did you know, for all of our federal candidates, Tyson was one of the largest contributors behind Walmart? There's a reason for this. It's because they want to continue to get that subsidy money rather than having that subsidy money be allocated to the people that really need it. And I also talk about farmer co-ops because they're so important. Farmer co-ops are something not a lot of people know about, where basically a farmer can grow all of the food they need, for their community. And then whatever they aren't able to sell, the government actually comes in and buys that food and then distributes it to that community, to the people in need who can't afford it. So we need more farmer co-ops as well.
All right. And we've got protecting cryptocurrencies from centralization.
Absolutely. So the whole point of the blockchain and decentralized currency was to allow people to seek self-sovereignty. And we are seeing more and more how centralized banks are attacking this, because they are centralized banks. So they don't want as decentralized currency. They don't want to make it, they want to continue to be the only authority that can issue currency, rather than allowing people to be able to issue themselves currency. We need to make sure that we aren't allowing exchanges to basically take over and to force people to have their own wallets. There's a whole bunch of different things that we need to talk about with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, especially as we're seeing it grow more and more and more. And it's basically the currency of the future. And if you go to danforarkansas.com, click on issues, read that cryptocurrency policy, because I know a lot of people will push back and they'll be like, well, it's bad for the planet, it has carbon footprints. But what we have to understand right now is that the cryptocurrency industry is one of the greenest industries on earth, and around 56% of all mining facilities are currently using renewable energy sources. And we do need to make that better. We need to improve the amount of energy efficiency that we're using, and we will continue to see that efficiency grow. We'll continue to see the cryptocurrency business, become the greenest energy industry out there. And we need to do everything we can to make that happen as fast as possible.
Speaking with Dan Whitfield, Democratic candidate for United States Senate. If you have a question or a comment, you can give us a call 870-277-1080 or leave your questions and comments on our Facebook Live feed. We got one comment from Derek Coleman who says we are both a republic and a democracy. And of course, you have a comment. Yeah. You can also drop that in the comments as well. All right. Looks like we just about got through everything on your issues list. We have one more, which is
more policies on there.
Well, we got one more on here, pro-life, but still pro-choice.
Yeah. So I think that's very important. One of the biggest problems in our society right now is that we have been set to fight against each other on really hot topic issues and to distract ourselves from what other issues we're facing out there. So the problem of abortion is due to unwanted pregnancies. We've been focusing on the problem and not the actual cause of the problem. And I think that's a really big issue. If we focused on ending unwanted pregnancies or reducing the amount of unwanted pregnancies, there wouldn't be an abortion debate anymore. And it's a very simple thing to do. You really do two things. Number one, you have real sex education. You have to have proper sex education. People have to understand about their bodies, and they have to understand how their bodies work and the different things out there, and not just be taught that abstinence is best. As a student, I was taking my entry-level courses, and there were high school students in these courses, and it came up where we were talking about sex education here in Arkansas, and I was like, I was horrified to learn how terrible it is. For example, you're not guaranteed a sex education. You have to get a permission slip, have your parents sign the permission slip, return it to school before you can even be educated. And then on top of that, once that happens, it's pretty much all just abstinence is best, talking about how terrible sex is and all these different things. But we have to understand that with the freedom of information at all of our children's hands, we can't shelter them like our parents were able to shelter us. If kids want to have sex, they're going to have sex, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we have to make sure that they are prepared, that they're safe, and they understand the consequences of their actions rather than just saying don't do it and expecting them not to do it. If we can end unwanted pregnancies or reduce the amount, then we don't have an abortion debate. Now, I am personally pro-life, but I'm legislatively pro-choice. My wife and I, during our last pregnancy, we found out around 20 weeks that our twins were actually diagnosed with trisomy 18, which is it's a fatal condition. Basically, we were told by several doctors that there's no way that the children could live after birth. Shortly after, one of the twins was absorbed, and we did everything we could. We saw multiple doctors, we did multiple tests, and unfortunately, everything came back the same with the same diagnosis. So, my wife, we prayed every night. We did everything we could to, hope that they were wrong. My wife was later told by our last doctor that, there's no way that Christy would be able to survive a vaginal birth. So she decided to go with a C-section to give our daughter the best possible chance. And she went through that. We had Father Paul, a pastor from our Catholic church, was there, and he baptized her, and she lived for about 5 hours before she died in my arms, because that was the choice that we made. We chose not to have an abortion because that was our personal choice. And whether or not a woman chooses to have an abortion should be between 3 people: herself, her family, and her doctor, and her relationship with God. And that's it. It shouldn't have anything to do with an ideological politician somewhere else that doesn't even know who this person is or what they're going through. We have to make sure that we are not allowing our elected officials to take away the rights of our daughters, our sisters, and our mothers.
All right. Oh, and well, I clicked more issues, and there's actually more issues. We got about a couple minutes left, so we won't get a chance to do all of them. Let me try to pick one that I think that would be relevant to our listeners. Okay, definitely one that is of concern to the African-American community: ending gerrymandering.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you got about 2 minutes to talk about it.
I'll talk about as quick as possible. So there's a really big problem in gerrymandering, as we all saw. I actually went to the public comment period for our redistricting, and I spoke with Betty Dickey, and I asked her directly. I said, as a Democratic voter, how can you alleviate my concerns that the maps aren't going to be gerrymandered, that we are going to have fair representation throughout our state? And you know what she told me? She basically cited a federal case and said, we don't have to. She made it very clear that the GOP was going to gerrymander our state. Unfortunately, right now, there's not a lot we can do about it. We need federal regulations to come through, like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the For the People Act. We need to bring these pieces of legislation forward to prevent gerrymandering in the future. But unfortunately, we are stuck with what we have now. Our redistricting was done. The director was Betty Dickey. People might not know who she is, but just think of it this way. Her son, his name is the name on Tom Cotton's mortgage that Tom Cotton supposedly lives at. The panel was Asa Hutchinson, Leslie Rutledge, and the Secretary of State, John Thurston, all GOP. It was led by Jason Rapert and a GOP-led committee. The entire thing was a partisan process, and there's nothing we can do about it, which is why it's so important. The only way you can beat gerrymandering is by showing up to the polls in large numbers to vote. What makes me a really unique candidate for the Democratic ticket right now is I have something to bring that no other candidate does. Some of y'all may know me. I did run as an independent against Senator Tom Cotton back in 2020. And unfortunately, due to a legal battle for ballot access, Leslie Rutledge pushed our case until March of 2021. So we didn't get on the ballot in time, but it allowed me to build a large group of diverse supporters, independents, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party members, and everyone in between. I built this coalition of support that I'm going to have come to the polls in November and vote not just for me on the Democratic ticket, but to vote for all of the Democrats on the ticket, because we have.
And Dan, I hate to have to cut you. We're gonna have to leave it there. It's definitely been a pleasure to have you on. We only got about 30 seconds left. That's danforarkansas.com. You can check him out. You can donate. You can volunteer. You can get in touch with him. Again, KLK and the Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. We do not endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office. These interviews are provided for informational purposes only, but we cannot stress enough, even though we're not going to tell you who to vote for, but exercise your right to vote. We will resume our series of interviews tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to have Jan Morgan on at, I believe, 10 a.m. And we are going to have, let me pull up the calendar, see who else we are going to have as well. And tomorrow we will have Jan Morgan at 10 a.m. and Natalie James at 11 a.m. They're also running for U.S. Senate. This is All Gospel Wednesday. You guys have a great and blessed day. This is KLEK on 2.5 FM. Well, thank you so much, Dan, and we wish you the best of luck in your campaign, and we will talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a good day.
You too.